And now we move to our rebuttal. Dr. Kurtz, please.
Thank you very much. Professor Craig, you have conceded my main point. You have admitted that you can be moral without belief in God. If God is essential, then how is it essential for the millions and millions of people who don't believe in God in your sense, namely a Christian God, and yet behave morally and ethically? So that's the first point. Second, can you hear in the back? Second, yes.
Just bring these down. Okay. You just have it a little too loud. Just give it a second.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, the second point. The alternatives are not theism versus humanism or nihilism. There are surely many other alternatives beside that. I mean, many people, millions of people, have been optimistic about life, have lived the full life, have found life exciting and exuberant and significant. And they don't wring their hands about whether or not there is an immortal life. It's living life here and now that counts. And if you reject theism, if you're a skeptic, you can still lead the good life fully, and it does not lead to despair. They tell the story of Woody Allen, who laid awake at nights worrying whether or not the sun would burn down in 5 billion years. Okay, you live the full life in spite of that. A life of actualization, a life of peace and prosperity, a life of love and excitement. The richness of life is so very important, and I don't see where nihilism follows. It may follow for you, but it's not the option for other people. Now you say you're a theist, but which God? And what did God command? The Islamic martyrs who slammed their plane into the World Trade Towers, saying, Allah Akbar, God is great, as they die for belief in God. And we in America sing, God bless America. The German army going to war saying, Gott mit uns, and the French army, mon Dieu, believing in the same God, yet leading to different contradictory results. So that doesn't solve the matter. Even if everyone believed in God, you still have these powerful moral disagreements and moral disputes. Now, the Christian God says, yes, believe in Jesus and you shall be saved. In your writings, that is what you argue for. But the question I would ask you, would the Hindu and the Muslim and the Jew and the Buddhist and the non-believer be saved? The world is made up of 6 billion people, and there are many others who are not Christians. And would life be meaningful for them in this scheme of events? Now you say that God is the only objective basis for morality, that this universe is created by God and it manifests His justice and righteousness, His love for us. How do you explain the dying of 6,000 innocent people at the World Trade Towers? How and why did a loving God permit that to happen? The universe is as we find it, and we try to live the best life we can, and we use our best intelligence and goodwill to solve our problems and live together. But to postulate an ethical God who nonetheless allows evil to exist is the Achilles heel of the classical notion of an omnipotent God. Now you ask, why should we favor the human species? This is human speciesism. Yes, it is indeed. We are human beings. We love one another. Our whole life is tied up with our relationship to our fellow and sister human beings. And we have responsibilities and obligations that will develop and that do develop and that we live by. and humanists and others who don't accept your theistic view are willing to make sacrifices, to die for others, to do what they can. It seems to me that altruism and empathy and compassion is very basic to the human species, as it is some other species, but not to the extent that it is for the human species. And so we don't have to say, we surely cannot say, that if God did not exist, then we would be moral despots, that then whatever a Stalin does or whatever a Hitler does makes no difference. It is not a question of mere taste and subjectivity. There are objective standards that we can use. Now, these standards are relative to human interests and needs, and these standards develop over a period of time. There is an evolution through human history and human civilization, and a whole number of basic moral principles have emerged. Surely the theist does not have a monopoly on moral virtue and moral principles. And surely there have been other people on this planet throughout the long history of the human species that have been deeply concerned of moral obligation, moral justice, the goods and needs of others. So it seems to me that you've labeled so many people who believe in doing human good, who believe that life is intrinsically worthwhile, who believe that we have a moral obligation to our fellow human beings, and who believe that we ought to make sacrifices to them. And for you to say that unless we accept your definition of God and your definition of theism, that we cannot be moral is simply false and untrue. Indeed, let me turn the tables and let me submit to you that if the reason why you're moral is because you believe in God, then you've not developed the full dimensions of the human personality. I postulated that there is a tendency, a potentiality for developing a moral appreciation for others, for realizing a moral virtues. Under proper conditions, this will develop. It is absent in some individuals, sociopaths, and so we have laws in order to regulate human society and accountability. But these laws are no substitute for morality itself. And so human beings will develop moral sensibilities. If you say that you will not develop these moral sensibilities, that they would not exist, that they cannot be internalized, that we would be cruel and crude, and that we would ignore the interests and needs of other people unless we believe in God, then you lack moral development in itself. Moral development is autonomous. Moral principles are part of what we are as human beings. They define us as human beings. And therefore, to say that if we don't accept your religious doctrine, that you end up as nihilists, immoral nihilists, is false, untrue, and immoral.